The story kicks off with a carriage arriving in Lancet, the capital of the Harakia Empire. Inside, a little blonde girl named Ivy looks out the window in total awe, saying how the view is way better than anything she's seen in books. A couple of other passengers notice her reaction and make fun of her country bumpkin vibe, but Ivy just listens to them without caring at all. The lady with her, called the director, shares her excitement, agrees about how awesome the view is, and then points out the fruit market, which totally amazes Ivy since she's never seen fruits like these before. One of the passengers rudely chimes in, telling Ivy to enjoy the view while she can, assuming a country girl like her won't ever get another chance to see the Imperial Palace. The director replies calmly and confidently, explaining that Ivy is actually going to be living in the Imperial Palace starting today. The two passengers are shocked by this news, and the guy sarcastically asks if they got scammed by someone promising Ivy a job as a maid. The director then proudly announces that Ivy is enrolling in the Imperial Academy for the Gifted. The passengers are even more mind-blown, knowing that even nobles struggle to get into this academy, and they ask what kind of trick she pulled. In that moment, Ivy remembers how super happy the director was when the acceptance letter arrived, realizing that without this lady, she couldn't have even applied, since she's the one who saved her from her painful past. We get a flashback where the director arrives at an inn and finds little Ivy in a terrible state, getting insulted by the innkeeper who calls her useless and kicks her out. The little girl begs not to be abandoned, and that's when the director steps in, furious at this cruel treatment. The director confronts the innkeeper, asking if she even feeds the kid, but the innkeeper shoots back that the girl has to earn her keep and tells the director to mind her own business. The director offers to take the girl with her, so the innkeeper takes advantage of the situation and demands a crazy amount of 10,000 gold coins, claiming it's for her raising expenses. Even though the amount is ridiculous, the director agrees to pay it on the spot. Determined to save Ivy, she hugs her and reassures her that everything will be okay. After that, Ivy moves into the director's orphanage, where she goes to school and pays her tuition by cleaning. Life was better, but resources were super tight, and the kids often fought over food, with Ivy always giving up her portion and pretending she was full. Ivy knew the director was always stressing about feeding the kids, and she really wanted to help out. One day, she spots an ad for new student admissions at the Imperial Academy for the Gifted, and notices that the academy provides food, clothes, and housing for its students. She sees this as a chance to take some weight off the director's shoulders, so she decides to apply. She hid her real reason so she wouldn't worry her, claiming she just wanted to study and asked for her permission. That night, Ivy prayed to her parents for the first time, even though she knows nothing about them, asking them to help her pass the exam, expressing how badly she wants to meet them someday. The flashback ends and we're back in the present in front of the crowded academy gate. An official announces that all applicants have to go in alone without their guardians. This rule causes a bunch of chaos, with many kids crying and clinging to their parents. The director worries about Ivy, but the little girl bravely steps forward, thanking her and promising to study hard and eat well. The director is so moved by Ivy's strength and bursts into tears, which surprises the little girl. The director gives her a big hug, telling her they'll always be thinking about her, and that she can call them if she runs into any trouble. Ivy says goodbye to her director with a smile and heads into the academy. From a balcony nearby, an old man who looks like the Prime Minister is watching the new students. He spots Ivy and wonders what she's doing there, since the minimum admission age is 7 and she looks way younger. Then he remembers her name, Ivy Alden, and it triggers a memory of a heated argument from the past. The scene cuts to a meeting of officials, where one of them was strongly objecting to admitting a certain kid, claiming her grades were low and that she was 17, way past the allowed age limit. Someone defends her, pointing out her family's great services during the war. It's revealed that the academy, an institution just for the gifted, was shut down for 7 years because of the war for the throne. And the real reason for the long closure wasn't the war itself, but the emperor's deep grief over losing his wife and their newborn daughter, Princess Evian, during that war. The emperor would feel pained whenever he saw little kids, making the reopening of the academy a super sensitive issue until the political situation completely settled down. The nobles kept trying to enroll their kids in the academy, hoping to catch the emperor's eye. But the emperor, knowing exactly what they were up to, kept delaying the reopening. And only this year did Emperor Clovis finally give the green light to reopen it. During the meeting, one of the officials drops a paper. The emperor orders the prime minister to pick it up. The emperor asks why this application was ignored. The official replies that the applicant is severely underqualified because she's from an orphanage. He adds that this academy might determine which kid His Majesty will adopt. The emperor coldly replies, denying that he'll be adopting a kid from the academy. He reminds them that the academy was founded for a noble purpose, to discover and nurture gifted kids, and that they've set up rules that completely go against this goal. the Emperor reveals what's on the application, explaining that a 7-year-old girl passed the high school graduation exam, with perfect scores in every single subject. The officials are stunned, since an exam like that is meant for kids aged 15 and up. Even so, they insist it's not enough, because the academy is basically a mini noble society, and spots are limited to just 500 students this year, making the competition insanely fierce. It catches the Emperor's eye that the girl's hobby is cleaning. Decisively, he orders them to admit her. The decision shocks the officials, and the Emperor leaves them to deal with it. Right before leaving entirely, the Emperor orders the Prime Minister to oversee her enrollment and make sure no one gets rejected because of their social status. Once he's gone, the officials rush to the Prime Minister, asking him nervously what to do. So he calmly tells them that the Emperor only ordered all students to be treated equally. They sigh in relief, and the Prime Minister looks at the application, reading the name Ivy Alden. Inside the academy, a guide named Melody welcomes Ivy. Melody tells her she saw in her files that she's from Elam and asks how her trip was. Ivy eagerly answers that the trip was super fun. Melody hands her the academy guidebook, which has a map and the rules. Ivy starts reading it super intensely, then hands it right back a moment later, saying she's memorized the whole thing. Melody is shocked by her crazy talent and tells her she can just keep the book. Ivy is overjoyed to have her very first book. Melody reminds her that the academy will hook her up with everything she needs. When Ivy gets to her fancy room, she's blown away by how beautiful it is. Melody lets her know her roommate will be arriving soon, then gives her some final instructions and leaves. Ivy happily wanders around and heads straight for the dining hall. On her way, a noble boy glares at her with disgust. Thinking she stole his brother's spot at the academy, he decides to teach her a lesson about her place and follows her to push her down the stairs from behind. But instead of Ivy falling, the boy finds himself tumbling down. Ivy asks what just happened and suddenly finds herself caught in the arms of another boy with black hair and blue eyes, who grabbed her before she could fall. Ivy is totally mesmerized by his pretty eyes. Another boy with red hair shows up and asks if she's all right. The bully recognizes them in shock. It's Lord Arcel and Lord Roska, from two super famous noble families. The bully cowardly apologizes and runs off. Arcel advises Ivy to tell a professor if she gets bullied again. Before she can even thank them, a huge crowd of fangirls rushes towards them, shoving Ivy out of the way. Ivy decides to just leave, while Arcel watches her walk away, thinking about how she got a perfect score on the entrance exam just like he did, and how she's the youngest student ever admitted. In the dining hall, Arcel and Roska sit together, but they don't get much peace before students crowd around them again. Arcel coldly rejects their requests to sit with them, which annoys Roska, who scolds him for being so harsh. Arcel spots Ivy looking for a place to sit and watches her get turned away by the other students. They lock eyes, so Ivy heads over to thank them for helping her earlier. She asks if she can sit with them, but Roska politely declines, claiming Arcel likes to eat in peace. Ivy leaves, and Arcel immediately calls Roska out on it, calling him useless. Arcel grabs his plate and walks away. Ivy decides to take her food and eat outside. Heading towards the garden, she follows the sweet smell of flowers and ends up in a forest. She remembers from the map that the Imperial Palace is right behind this forest and decides to take a quick peek. After crossing the forest, she realizes she's ended up in a graveyard, something the Academy guidebook definitely didn't mention. She notices one of the graves hasn't been cleaned in ages, and without even thinking, she starts cleaning it, remembering her old habit of cleaning classrooms to pay her tuition. Suddenly, she senses someone else is there. A blonde man appears. It's the Emperor himself coming to visit the grave. He finds Ivy fast asleep next to the tomb. The Emperor angrily wonders who dared to enter this place, but is totally caught off guard seeing a little girl sleeping there. Ivy wakes up in a panic, remembering the curfew. She asks the man for the time, and he tells her it's about 6 o'clock. Relieved, she turns to ask the guy who he is. The Emperor figures out she didn't recognize him, and when she asks if he's a professor at the academy, he decides to play along and introduces himself as Cian Loin. Ivy happily introduces herself, and the Emperor remembers his late wife, imagining what their daughter would have looked like if she grew up. He snaps out of his thoughts and asks her what she's doing here. Ivy tells him the smell of flowers drew her in, and apologizes if the place is off limits. The Emperor gently warns her not to wander around alone, especially inside the Imperial Palace. Ivy thanks him for the tip. Suddenly, she remembers the time, and he offers to walk her back. She politely declines, claiming she knows the way, but starts crawling back the way she came. She calls out to him again, asking him to remember her name. The Emperor watches her go, thinking about how soft he gets when it comes to kids. He places a bouquet of flowers on the grave and notices the handkerchief Ivy left behind. Ivy reaches her dorm panting, super relieved she wasn't late. Suddenly, she realizes she left her handkerchief back at the graveyard. She feels sad because it was the first gift she got that day, but decides she'll just ask for Professor Cian's office tomorrow to get it back. And then, when she enters her room, she finds a group of girls hanging out. One of them asks Ivy who she is, identifying her as the girl from the orphanage. The others mock her plain clothes, making Ivy look down at her wrinkled outfit. A girl with silver hair and purple eyes steps up, and one of the girls tells her that her new roommate isn't from a noble class. The girl stops her friends from making fun of her, then turns to Ivy and calls her pathetic, pointing out her skinny frame and shabby look. She sarcastically asks if the orphanage starves its kids. Ivy blows up in defense of her director, insisting she's the kindest person in the world. One of the girls angrily shoots back, calling Ivy a commoner and a lost cause, demanding she apologize. The silver-haired girl, Irene, gets annoyed and leaves. With her friends trailing right behind her, Ivy is left all alone, stinging from the insult. The next morning, Ivy happily puts on her fresh new school uniform. She remembers her roommate Irene and wonders if she's still asleep. Ivy decides to check on her and apologize for raising her voice yesterday. When she opens the door, she finds Irene's friends mocking her all over again. They tell her Irene is a noble and that she needs to back off. Ivy leaves feeling pretty disappointed. Meanwhile, Irene arrives, and one of her friends suggests Irene should just make her roommate her maid. The girls proudly tell Irene they kicked Ivy out. Irene gets mad and tells them to go downstairs. Outside, a tour of the Imperial Palace kicks off. Ivy feels super awkward getting weird looks from the other students. A girl named Lemura comes up to her and offers to let her tag along with her group. Ivy is thrilled and agrees. Lemura tells her she's also a commoner, so she gets exactly how she feels. Lemura curiously asks Ivy if she was secretly adopted by a noble family, or maybe she's the illegitimate daughter of some high-ranking VIP, revealing she heard a rumor that the Emperor himself picked her. Ivy is shocked by this crazy rumor and totally denies it. Suddenly, Arcel and Rosca show up, and a crowd of students swarms them instantly. Lemura explains to Ivy that everyone expects the Emperor to adopt one of them. Arcel is the super-gifted son of a duke, and Rosca is the son of a marquis and an elite swordsman, and whoever ends up becoming the prince is supposedly going to marry the daughter of the filthy rich Terrence family. That's why everyone's obsessing over them. Ivy walks right up to greet Arcel, leaving Lemura completely speechless at how bold she is. Ivy enthusiastically greets Arcel and asks him where Rosca is. Lemura quickly asks Ivy to introduce her. Ivy introduces Lemura to Arcel, but he just excuses himself, saying he's tired and leaves. Ivy feels bummed, but Lemura brushes it off real quick and heads back to her friends. Her friends ask her what Ivy said about the Emperor picking her, so Lemura tells them it's not confirmed yet. They get mad at her for spreading an unconfirmed rumor, but she defends herself, saying Ivy didn't exactly deny it clearly, and points out she was chatting with Arcel like they're close. The palace tour continues, and the students are in absolute awe. Ivy notices some dark marks on the walls, and the guide explains they're leftover scars from the Succession War. She explains that the Emperor made it a priority to fix the damage affecting the regular people, dedicating funds to public facilities first. Ivy remembers how her director used to come home so happy after the Emperor ordered an increase in orphanage funding. Feeling super grateful, Ivy silently bows to the Emperor. Meanwhile, the Emperor is stuck in a tense meeting with his officials about jacking up taxes on the upper class. The Emperor gets fed up with their pointless arguing and calls for a 10-minute break. He walks over to the window to catch his breath and spots Ivy down below waving at him. The Emperor returns to the meeting and surprises everyone by backing down from his decision, leaving them totally confused. In the main hall, the students get to meet some of the Imperial guards. One of the guards is hyped to see his nephew, and Ivy is amazed by their armor. Ivy realizes that pretty much everyone here has connections inside the palace, while Lemura watches them all with major jealousy. Lemura plots to humiliate Ivy in front of everyone. She walks up and sarcastically asks if she's jealous, then adds that she doesn't need to be since she's got the Emperor backing her. Ivy asks what she means, so Lemura brings up what she said earlier about the Emperor personally handpicking her. She accuses her of lying to exploit the Emperor's name, but Ivy fiercely denies it. One of the Emperor's guards steps in and scolds Ivy for throwing the Emperor's name around. At that exact moment, Arcel shows up and proves Ivy was actually telling the truth, explaining that the Emperor personally approved her admission because she was about to get rejected for her social status despite her perfect scores. The guard apologizes to Ivy, and it's clear now that everyone just heard the real story. Lemura feels insanely embarrassed. Arcel confronts Lemura, pointing out that Ivy never spread that rumor herself and had no clue the Emperor even intervened. He demands to know why she deliberately stirred up this whole misunderstanding, leaving Lemura humiliated and trying to blame it all on her friends. Arcel tells her to think before she acts and walks off. Meanwhile, Ivy is over the moon hearing that the Emperor personally picked her, thinking this means she's totally safe from getting kicked out. Lemira gets mocked by her own friends because Arcel told her off, and they start plotting against Ivy. Later on, during a tour in the Imperial Palace's History Hall, Ivy wanders off from the group to get a look at a portrait of the Emperor, who she now sees as her savior. Lemura and her friends seize the chance to ditch her and lock the doors right behind her. When it's time to head back, Irene, Ivy's roommate, notices she's missing and tells the guide. The situation escalates fast and reaches the Prime Minister, who gets absolutely furious about losing a kid inside the palace. The Prime Minister explains that doing an immediate search is impossible due to the super strict curfew the Emperor enforced after the tragedy of the Succession War, where he lost his wife and daughter. He adds that anyone caught out past curfew faces the death penalty. Meanwhile, Ivy finds herself locked in the dark, creepy hall, where the paintings almost look alive. She tries to keep her cool and wait for help, next to a window lit by the moonlight before she eventually falls asleep. Back at the dorms, Arcel and Rosca hear the news that Ivy is missing. Realizing how much danger she's in, Arcel decides to use their special Imperial passes to go look for her in the dead of night, with Rosca reluctantly tagging along. While searching through the pitch-black palace, they're caught off guard by the Emperor himself, who scolds them for breaking the curfew. Arcel tells the Emperor that an Academy student named Ivy Alden is missing inside the palace, and that they were looking for her because they were scared she'd be trapped there until morning. The moment he hears the name Ivy, the Emperor remembers her and decides to step in. The Emperor orders the boys back to their dorms, then decides to summon Seraphina, the palace witch, to use magic to track her down. Seraphina, the Academy's OP director and the strongest mage alive, pulls up to the Monostone warehouse. The Emperor tells her a child is missing and orders a tracking spell to find her. Seraphina is shocked he's willing to break the rules for one kid, but she starts prepping the spell anyway. During the ritual, she accidentally mentions Lillian, the late Empress. The Emperor grills her, and she explains that the late Empress had secret powers that boosted her magic accuracy, a secret Lillian made her keep. The Emperor tells her to get back to work. Meanwhile, Ivy is freezing and hungry in a dark hall, thinking back to her miserable life at the inn before the director saved her. Suddenly, a magical light appears and approaches her. She hears a gentle voice comforting her, making her feel safe. Seraphina successfully tracks Ivy and arrives just in time to save her. As she picks her up, she notices Ivy has a slight fever and mentions they have a strong magical compatibility. They return to the dorms where Arcel and Rosca are waiting anxiously. Seraphina thanks them for helping find Ivy, but keeps the Emperor's involvement a secret. Arcel asks Ivy if someone locked her in on purpose. Not wanting to blame anyone without proof, Ivy claims she just got distracted by the paintings and lost track of time. The director notices Ivy's hand is swollen and heals it with magic. After Ivy leaves, Arcel tells the director it definitely wasn't an accident. The director agrees, saying she knows and plans to punish the culprit. Back in her room, Ivy finds a sandwich and some milk. She thinks the director left it, but it was actually from her roommate Erin, who was worried sick. The next morning, Arcel notices Lemora and her friends whispering nervously. He joins them and mentions that the director knows what happened and the culprit might get expelled. He offers to help them and swears on his family name to protect them if they tell the truth. The girls break down and admit Lemora tricked them into locking Ivy up. Arcel reminds them to apologize to Ivy. Later, he tells Rosca that Lemora was the one behind it, just like they thought, and decides to get revenge his own way. Arcel approaches Lemora and claims a staff member found something she lost. She happily follows him, only for him to lead her into an empty storage room and lock the door. He tells her through the door that she can only come out once she confesses. Lemora denies it at first, but soon collapses in fear of the dark and spills everything. The door opens, and Ivy is standing there. Lemora accuses Ivy of using Arcel for revenge and tries to hit her, but Seraphina steps in and stops her. Lemora cries and confesses everything to the director, begging Ivy for forgiveness. Ivy refuses, stating that her actions were intentional, not a mistake. Then, the director steps forward to deliver the punishment. The director orders Lemora to apologize to Ivy every single day until she's forgiven. Lemora hates the idea and begs for any other punishment, but she runs away when the director insists. The director is baffled, while Arcel asks Ivy if she's still determined not to forgive Lemora and keep things a secret. Ivy confirms she is. The next day, Ivy feels the eyes of all the students on her in the dining hall, which is super awkward. She tries to avoid them but runs into Lemora. Ivy thinks she's there to apologize, but Lamora just snaps, takes her food, and storms off. Ivy figures she just needs time, just as she's about to eat. Her roommate Erin approaches her. Ivy greets her happily, and Erin sits down, saying she wanted to talk. Erin remembers the day she arrived at the academy, and how excited she was to meet her cute little roommate. It turns out Erin is from the South, where kids grow up fast. She was a bit of a troublemaker, so her family sent her to the academy to make friends. When she first met Ivy, she mistook her thin appearance for neglect from the orphanage, which upset Ivy and made Erin feel guilty later. In the present, Erin sincerely apologizes for the misunderstanding. Ivy thanks her, noting she's the first person to apologize for that. She also thanks her for the food the night before. Erin admits she was really worried, and Ivy realizes how kind she actually is. Rosca and Arcel join them, but Erin totally cold shoulders Rosca when he tries to introduce himself. Rosca notices Erin's cold vibe, while their table draws attention from the other students. Later in their room, Erin asks Ivy what classes she picked. Ivy says she hasn't decided yet, so Erin mentions her family already picked hers. Erin hopes Ivy gets to choose what she actually wants. The next day, Ivy struggles to choose between fun subjects like philosophy and practical ones that'll help her make money later. She decides to pick 3 of each for balance. All that's left is picking a math professor, which she leaves for the very last second. Meanwhile, Lamora sits alone in the dining hall, feeling bitter as she watches Ivy happily hanging out with Erin, Arcel, and Rosca. She feels like Ivy stole her spot and decides to find Ivy's weakness for revenge. She plans to catch her sucking up to teachers to force her to swap rooms so she can get closer to Erin. While she's plotting, she notices 2 girls bullying Ivy. They mock her for being from an orphanage, but Ivy doesn't react. The girls grab Ivy's bag and look at her books with total disdain. Lamora steps in and claims Erin is looking for Ivy, forcing the girls to give the bag back and leave. Ivy thanks her, but Lamora just scolds her for being weak and pathetic. Ivy explains she didn't fight back because the girls are Erin's friends. Lamora warns her that her weakness makes commoners look bad and leaves. Ivy feels grateful and hopes their relationship gets better. Ivy goes to submit her papers and randomly picks the first professor on the math list. After she leaves, 2 other students see she signed up for Professor Malice, a guy known for being weird and having impossible classes, and they feel sorry for her. On the first day, Ivy heads to math class hyped, but finds the hall in a creepy, abandoned building at the edge of the campus. Inside, the room is empty and scary. There's a message on the board. Anyone who wants to attend this class must solve 500 advanced math problems before the next lesson. Ivy gets fired up and takes the challenge. Meanwhile, a student bumps into Professor Malice outside and runs away in fear. He grumbles about the students, then enters the room only to be surprised by Ivy greeting him with a smile. Malice asks if she finished the assignment, and she admits she couldn't solve just one problem. Because of that, he tells her she's not fit for his class and orders her to drop it immediately. Ivy begs him to just help her understand that one problem, and she manages to convince him. When he looks at her solutions, he's shocked. They're so accurate they could be in a textbook. He's baffled how she solved the hard stuff, but got stuck on a problem using the same formula. It turns out he made a tiny change to the question's phrasing. He gets excited and starts explaining it on the board. Ivy gets it instantly and thanks him. When she says she'll go drop the class now, he changes his mind and tells her to forget it, announcing that real lessons start next time. Ivy is thrilled he accepted her as a student. The next day, the professor arrives at the remote hall, thinking about changing his mind, but he's met with a bright light. He finds that Ivy has cleaned the entire place, saying it's hard to study in a dusty room. He's impressed by her passion, especially since he put spiders outside to scare people off. He pats her head and praises her, but tells her not to do it again so she can save her energy for studying. After class, the professor watches her leave, thinking she's a genius and totally dedicated. She learned 2 weeks' worth of material in one day. He decides to help her reach her full potential, and rushes to see Serafina, calling her by name, which makes her snap at him to follow campus rules. Later, while Ivy is studying in the dining hall, her friends ask why she's taking the infamous Professor Malice's class. They tell her he's a weirdo, whose assignments are too hard and who doesn't care about students, which could ruin their academic future. But Ivy defends him, insisting he's kind and a great teacher, and that she's already finished 2 chapters of advanced math. Her friends are shocked at her progress, and realize she might get ahead of them. One by one, they all decide to sign up for his class so they don't fall behind. In their next session, Malice heads to the hall, planning to go easy on Ivy's homework, and even brings her a snack. But he hears her friends trying to convince her to switch classes. He gets furious and bursts in, yelling at them. Ivy calms him down with a cute greeting, so he turns to the others and asks why they're interfering. Erin steps up and tells him that the hall's distance is too much for Ivy. She's even skipping breakfast and getting dark circles from all the work. The professor is moved. Erin tells him that if he wants Ivy to stay, he needs a closer classroom. He reluctantly agrees, claiming he was already planning to move. Then Aaron mentions this will help them too, and he realizes they all signed up. He accepts them but warns they might not handle the advanced level. They insist they can keep up. He decides to test them with a legendary hard problem and gives them 15 minutes. After just 2 minutes, Arcel turns in a perfect answer. Malice is impressed. At the 8-minute mark, Rosca solves it in a super creative way, which shocks the professor, who sees potential genius in him. Only Aaron is left. As time runs out, she feels the pressure. She remembers her teacher telling her never to give up and to try every possible solution. With sheer grit, she eliminates formulas one by one and hits the right answer in the final seconds. Malice announces they all passed and agrees to teach them, but on the condition that they don't bring any more students. Later, Malice visits Serafina and tells her he wants to be Ivy's official guardian because of her genius. But she tells him Ivy already has one, someone whose identity is top secret. He gets mad, claiming that as the Empire's top mathematician, he deserves the spot. But she gently kicks him out. The next day, the students complain about the heavy homework, but Ivy finishes hers at lightning speed. When they ask how, she says it was just review for her thanks to the professor. Suddenly, Ivy's stomach growls, and her friends take her to get food. At the restaurant, Aaron notices Ivy always picks sandwiches. Ivy admits she doesn't know the names of other dishes. Aaron suggests they order all 10 items on the menu, and the two boys will finish whatever is left. Ivy is blown away by the new flavors, while the boys polish off 8 plates in record time. Afterward, Arcel rejects a lunch invite from the Duke's sons, just to stay with Ivy. Rosca notices Arcel acting weird, and calls him out for always prioritizing Ivy. Rosca hints that he knows why, and asks him to think about who Ivy reminds him of. This flusters Arcel, who changes the subject. He watches Ivy laughing with Aaron, and suddenly remembers a mysterious woman with red hair. Memory takes him back to when he was 5, on his way with his father to the Crown Prince's wedding. His father tells him he and Rosca will work together in the future, which Arcel thinks is unlikely since his friend is so young. Arcel asks about rumors that the bride is a witch, but his father tells him not to believe everything he hears. When they arrive, Arcel sees Rosca running toward the Forbidden Forest. Remembering his teacher's warnings, he chases after him. In the forest, they meet the red-haired woman. Arcel recognizes her as the witch everyone warned him about, the one rumored to have enchanted the prince. Despite Arcel's warnings, Rosca agrees to go pick apples with her, so Arcel has no choice but to follow to protect him. He plans to jump in if anything suspicious happens, but suddenly he can't keep up. He trips and falls down a small slope, injuring his leg. When the woman approaches, he tells her to back off and tries to intimidate her by saying he's the Duke's son. She ignores him, places her hand on his leg, and heals it with magic. Arcel asks what she wants in return, assuming she's after his family's status. She just taps his forehead and tells him the first thing you say when someone helps you is, "Thank you." This memory makes him finally realize why Ivy reminds him of Lillian. Later, when Ivy asks why he's so nice to her, he remembers Lillian saying the same thing. Lillian had told him she knew why he was asking, and added that they would one day become very important people to her child. Lillian asked Arcel and Rosca to be good friends to her child, saying they would help the child grow up happy. The flashback ends as Ivy snaps Arcel out of his daze. Arcel smiles and tells her he's nice to her because they're friends. Ivy is so happy to hear that. Before their friends interrupt, Arcel wonders to himself why Ivy feels so much like Lillian's child. The next morning is Guardian Day, and Erin is dressed up in a beautiful gown. She explains that every student gets gifts from their guardian today. Erin realizes Ivy might not get anything, so she tries to comfort her and promises to bring her sweets. Erin leaves, and Ivy goes to the lobby filled with gifts and students. She hears some students mocking her, so she decides to watch for a bit and then head back. The staff starts handing out gifts, and Ivy enjoys seeing everyone's happy faces. Just as she's about to leave, she hears her name called. Ivy is shocked as she receives a small pink box. She's deeply moved. It's the first carefully wrapped gift she's ever received. But a bully stops her and demands she hand it over, claiming it was delivered to her by mistake. Ivy stands her ground, pointing out her name is on it. At that moment, a beautiful red-haired girl named Isarella steps in. Isarella defends Ivy, surprising the other girls. She suggests Ivy open the gift in front of everyone to settle the argument. Ivy reluctantly agrees, but the bully snatches the box and rips the wrapping off. She mocks the contents and throws it toward Ivy. A black rock-like ball falls out, and everyone starts laughing. Ivy collapses to the ground, while Isarella acts shocked. Ivy stands up and picks up the ball, insisting it's a precious gift from her guardian. Suddenly, the ball starts glowing with a brilliant golden light. Everyone is stunned, as they realize it's a mana stone. These stones are incredibly rare, and worth more than diamonds. The students realize Ivy's guardian must be someone with massive influence. While Ivy holds the warm, glowing stone in her hands, and everyone else begs for a closer look. The girls crowd around Ivy, each wanting to touch the stone. In the middle of the chaos, Israela laughs mockingly, then apologizes, and reveals that the stone is actually a fake. She explains that the markets are full of these imitations, and that Ivy's gift is just a cheap knockoff charged with a bit of magic to look real. Everyone believes her, and Ivy feels heartbroken. Suddenly, an angry voice asks what's going on. It's Irene, who just arrived. Israela recognizes Irene, the youngest daughter of the Terran family, who was the flower of high society before Irene showed up. Irene confronts Israela and accuses her of lying. She reminds her that her family controls the magic stone trade, and that she's been trained to spot them since she was a kid. Irene swears on her family's honor that Ivy's stone is the real deal. Israela is shocked and embarrassed, and the students' support shifts to Irene. Meanwhile, a flashback reveals that the Emperor was the one who sent the gift. Before school started, he called the Prime Minister to tell him how hard it was to find a suitable guardian for Ivy, since most applicants were just greedy. The Prime Minister suggests appointing a fake professor as her guardian, and the Emperor agrees, using the name Cyan Roche that he used before. The Emperor remembers how happy he was when Ivy called him Professor, so he decides to send her a gift. A magic stone he hopes will light up her world. Back in the present, Ivy thanks Irene for her help, and Irene tells her the stone is real, because her family's motto is never to lie about goods. Irene explains the stone's power is just emitting light, but she estimates its value at about 10 million gold pieces, which shocks Ivy. On Guardian Day, which is a holiday for the students, Irene tells Ivy there are no classes, and advises her to stay in the dorm to rest after yesterday's events. After Irene leaves, Ivy notices a strange mark appearing on the back of her hand. She worries that Irene might have seen it and hopes it disappears quickly so no one sees it and hates her. Later, Ivy wakes up to find the sun starting to set. While putting the magic stone back in its box, she discovers her handkerchief inside, the one she left at the cemetery the day she was accepted into the academy. Ivy realizes her mysterious guardian is the same Professor Cyan she met there. She decides to rush to the cemetery before sunset, hoping to meet him and say thanks, and maybe return the expensive gift if it was sent by mistake. Ivy arrives at the cemetery and finds the Emperor, who she thinks is Professor Cyan, waiting for her. She runs toward him happily but trips, and he catches her before she falls. He asks why she came back to this place again, and then Ivy notices her hand hurts. But suddenly, the strange mark that appeared earlier vanishes. The Emperor notices her clothes are torn and dirty from crossing through thorns, but her body doesn't have a single scratch, as if the thorns avoided her on purpose. Ivy enthusiastically thanks him for the gift and for returning her handkerchief. The Emperor tells her the gift is hers, and that the magic stone was just something he had lying around the house, so no need to worry. Ivy is stunned to learn that a stone worth 10 million gold pieces was just something in the house. She then asks about his class and his office, so he gets flustered and tells her he won't be teaching this semester and doesn't have an office yet. The scene shifts to the Emperor ordering Serafina to set up an office for him at the academy. Serafina is surprised by his request, especially since he was hesitant at first even to be a guardian. He tells her it's because Ivy is looking for him. Serafina suggests a better solution, changing Ivy's guardian to Professor Malice, who admires her so much he delayed his retirement for her. But the Emperor firmly refuses, and the same mark that was on Ivy's hand appears on his. He then orders her to just get the office ready. In class, Professor Malice announces to his 4 students that a new classroom has been assigned to them in the main building, and they can use it as a lounge in their free time. The students are happy about the news, but the professor warns them that if they get too distracted by the upcoming festival and neglect their duties, they'll be banned from using it. After the lesson ends, the friends talk about their weekend plans as everyone is going home. Ivy explains she'll stay in the dorm because the orphanage is too far away. Luska suggests she go to the festival, but his friends scold him for not considering her feelings. As the students leave to meet their families, Ivy feels lonely and wishes she could go out and see the festival and the capital's streets, which she's only seen through a carriage window. While walking down the empty hallway, she's surprised by Professor Cyan appearing. He tells her he was waiting for her to take her on a tour of his new office. Ivy is impressed by the fancy office full of rare books and asks if he's read them all. He confirms it while hiding his confusion, since the books were rushed there by Serafina. Ivy asks if she can come to him to ask questions, and he agrees immediately. Suddenly, fireworks go off in the sky, signaling the start of the festival. The Emperor thinks to himself that he should stop them from firing those so they don't scare her. Ivy is amazed by the beauty of the fireworks from the window. The Emperor asks if she wants to go to the festival. She hesitates at first, claiming it's late, but he tells her he wanted to see the festival with her. The Emperor thinks he can't force her to go, but she quickly changes her mind and tells him excitedly that she wants to go with him. The Emperor smiles and agrees to take her. They arrive at the crowded festival, and while walking around, Ivy points out a balloon dart game. When he suggests she try it, she shyly refuses. The Emperor notices she's holding back her desires, so he decides to play around himself. Ivy wishes him luck, confident he'll succeed, but he fails miserably on his first throw, and after a second failed attempt too. He asks Ivy to help him with the last throw. She agrees excitedly, focuses, aims, and hits the target. They win a small bunny doll. Ivy presents it to him happily, but admits she wanted the bigger doll. After he teases her that he'll keep it, she grips the doll tightly. She hugs it happily, as it's the first doll she's ever owned. The Emperor decides they should try something else, but in the middle of the heavy crowd, Ivy gets lost from the Emperor. She finds herself alone in the crowd, and calls out for Professor Cayenne, but to no avail. She remembers her principal's advice to stay put if she gets lost, so she decides to wait in a quiet alley, confident the professor will find her. Suddenly, a strange man approaches her. He tells her he's been watching her and that she's been alone this whole time, then grabs her hand to kidnap her. Meanwhile, the Emperor is searching for her frantically, but can't find her anywhere. He starts feeling suffocated, remembering a painful tragedy from the past. He fears losing her just as he lost his family, and thinks about locking down the city and mobilizing the knights to find her. An elderly man approaches him and says he saw a blonde girl. The Emperor grabs him and asks where she is. So the man points him toward the Lost Children's Center, warning him about the danger of kidnappers. The Emperor is shocked by the word kidnappers and rushes to the center. At the center, a kind man had taken Ivy there after finding her alone. After all the other children are reunited with their families, Ivy remains alone and decides to head back to the academy on her own. Suddenly, the Emperor bursts into the center, calling her name. He asks the staff if Ivy is here, and she tells him her guardian just took her. The Emperor screams in rage that he is her guardian, wondering in terror who impersonated him and took Ivy. Suddenly, he sees her right in front of him. He hugs her tightly, apologizing for being late to find her. He finally calms down because she's safe. Later, Ivy feels overjoyed carrying the gifts he bought for her. Ivy wonders how she ended up with all these gifts and sweets. The scene flashes back a bit to the Emperor thanking the man who brought Ivy to the center. The man tells him he heard her stomach growling from hunger, so he wanted to give her something from his shop. The Emperor looks at Ivy, wondering, since she told him she wasn't hungry. Ivy gets flustered and insists she's full. The Emperor picks her up and decides to buy her every delicious thing there is. And indeed, the Emperor buys her everything she craves at the festival. Despite the huge amount of food, Ivy is overjoyed because he bought it specifically for her, and she enjoys the taste of the delicious cotton candy. After eating everything, it gets dark and they sit by the water. The Emperor tells her the final event of the festival is starting and points to the glowing lanterns filling the sky. Ivy remembers how she used to watch the lanterns from the orphanage window, wishing she could meet her parents. But today she feels like she doesn't need to wish for anything, as her heart feels warm and comforted while she dozes off in the Emperor's arms. Before heading back, they pass by an accessory vendor who notices Ivy doesn't have any hairpins. She suggests the young father buy her one. She shows him a green pin to match her eyes, then a trendy blue one based on a famous fairy tale. The Emperor asks for the blue pin, then changes his mind and decides to buy every single hairpin in the shop. The next morning, Ivy wakes up in her room and finds a gift box next to her. She opens it to find 17 colorful hairpins inside. She makes sure it's a gift for her and decides to write a thank you letter to the professor. Suddenly, she hears a carriage arriving and is surprised by Irene, Luska, and Arcel returning early. She runs happily to hug Irene. It turns out they all came back early because they were planning to go to the festival with her. The three friends are surprised that they all thought of the same thing. Ivy shyly tells them she already went to the festival the day before, so they're shocked and curiously ask her who she went with. Meanwhile, away from the academy, the Emperor was leading his knights on a night mission to capture a dangerous man named Siren. They find his hideout, and the Emperor confirms through a left-behind letter that Siren was indeed there. The Emperor remembers the painful past from when he was still a prince, and how Siren warned him that he'd regret refusing to help him take the throne. Siren was the one who manipulated the Emperor's older brother, and pushed him to start a succession war that claimed the lives of the Emperor's wife and daughter. The Emperor vows to find Siren and kill him this time before he causes another tragedy. As they prepare to head back, one of the knights tells him that the academy principal, Seraphina, sent him a letter. The Emperor opens the letter to find it's from Ivy. She thanks him in the letter for the hairpins, and asks him to help her with foreign languages to prepare for her upcoming exam. The Emperor smiles and orders his knights to hurry back so he can write a reply. In the following days, Ivy visited Professor Cyan's office every day hoping to see him, but she always found it empty, thinking his business trip was taking a long time. But each time she was surprised by new gifts he left for her, from dolls to fancy furniture. One day she finds a secret pink box with a lock and key, and decides to put something precious inside. After a class ends, Ivy waits until everyone leaves. but she's surprised by Israela appearing and sharply asking her what she's doing there. Israela angrily confronts Ivy, questioning what she's hiding in her pink box. But before things escalate, Luska suddenly shows up with a book, announcing he found the one Ivy was looking for. He apologizes to Israela for the interruption and offers to wait until she's finished talking, which puts her in such an awkward spot that she retreats immediately. Ivy thanks Luska for the save, and he jokingly asks her to return the favor one day. But Ivy refuses if his requests involve hitting Arcel or setting a trap for Professor Malice. Meanwhile, the Emperor was buried in studying an ancient language to prepare for his lesson with Ivy. But the Prime Minister interrupts to remind him of the massive pile of documents due by tomorrow. The Emperor feels the pressure, but insists he'll finish on time, then decides to take a short walk before his lesson with Ivy. He struggles with guilt for neglecting his duties and visiting his wife and daughter's graves, but he remembers his promise to Ivy and realizes he can't let her down or see that disappointment in her eyes again. When the Emperor reaches his office, he finds that Ivy has prepared everything for the lesson, including books, tea, and snacks. He's touched by her care and effort, feeling grateful that he kept his word. During the lesson, Ivy notices the professor looks exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. The Emperor is shocked she noticed his fatigue, something he brilliantly hides from everyone else, realizing he might be letting his guard down only with her. As the lesson ends, the Emperor thinks about cutting back on sleep to study more so he can keep up with Ivy's education, realizing just how passionate she is about learning. He offers to walk her to the dorm, and on the way gives her notes he specially prepared for her exam. Ivy thanks him warmly and promises to study hard. After she leaves, Israela appears watching from a distance, realizing there's a mysterious secret surrounding Ivy and her alleged guardian. A flashback reveals that Israela's father disowned her and kicked her out after she caused a feud with the powerful Terran family by insulting Ivy. He tells her not to come back until she proves her worth. Israela enters her room fuming, followed by her older brother, who offers to help. He tells her he heard about Ivy's magic stone, and that the name of her guardian, Cyan Roche, is suspicious, asking her to keep a close eye on Ivy, because things are about to get interesting. Through her brother's investigation, Israela discovers that the alleged guardian, Cyan Roche, is actually a 70-year-old man. She remembers the man she saw with Ivy and doubts it, as he had the build of a knight, not a frail old man. She wonders about his true identity and the document he gave Ivy that made her so happy. She laughs wickedly, realizing things are getting spicy, and decides she'll get Ivy expelled herself. The next day, Luska hands Ivy a note in the hallway, asking her to meet at a specific spot tomorrow, emphasizing she must keep it a secret from Arcel and Irene. Ivy agrees, wondering what it's about. Ivy reaches the old abandoned hall and finds it covered in dust. While she's wondering why she's there, Luska sneaks up behind her and she screams in terror. He tells her he called her because he needs help with a math problem. Ivy explains it to him, and he gets it quickly. Thanking her and admitting her explanation is easier than the professor's. Ivy asks Luska why he wanted help in secret, and he admits he didn't want to look like he was trying too hard, because no matter what, he can't keep up with Arcel. He feels embarrassed about what he said, so Ivy tries to comfort him. Luska changes the subject and decides to take her somewhere cool as a reward, promising to show her something amazing. He leads her through a forest path, but suddenly it starts pouring. He tells her it'll stop soon, but it only rains harder. Luska is disappointed because the place he wanted to show her looks much better in clear weather, and he feels guilty for making Ivy suffer, remembering the professor warned about the rain. Luska apologizes to Ivy, but is surprised to find her playing happily in the puddles. She tells him she hasn't played like this since her orphanage days, and thanks to him, she remembered these fun feelings. She adds that her best moments at the academy were because of him, and that he's very special to her. Luska is touched and realizes comparing himself to others changes nothing, and he was overthinking for no reason. He thanks Ivy, and they start splashing each other. Suddenly, a huge, colorful fish jumps out of the water, leaving them stunned, and Ivy decides to tell her friends what she saw. Meanwhile, palace officials are waiting for the Emperor, gossiping about the rumors of a magic stone given to a student. One of them confirms the stone is real according to the Terran family, sparking curiosity about the mysterious guardian. The Prime Minister scolds them. Then the Emperor arrives. After the meeting, the Prime Minister tells the Emperor he's worried about the rumors spreading, and that if Ivy finds out he's the Emperor, it could put her life in danger. A look of worry crosses the Emperor's face. Meanwhile, in the dining hall, a student invites Ivy to sit with her. In the library, a student offers Ivy her seat, but in return, she asks Ivy to talk up her family in front of Irene and her friends. The girl leaves but forgets her book, so Ivy decides to return it to her. Ivy discovers the book is The History of the Haricia Imperial Family, and starts reading it with excitement. She learns about the Battle of Urketon, where the Emperor and his small army crushed thousands of enemies. The book reveals that the secret to victory was a seal on the back of the Imperial family's hand, a mark left by a mysterious being for the first emperor. That grants special powers to whoever has it. Ivy reads that the current emperor is the only one who carries this seal now, and wishes she could see it one day. She thinks about the mark that sometimes pops up on her own hand, but quickly brushes it off and focuses on studying for her exam. She finds portraits of past emperors in the book and looks for a picture of the current one. Ivy is shocked to see that the emperor's portrait, with his golden hair and blue eyes, looks exactly like Professor Cyan. She tries to convince herself they're different. Professor Cyan is warm and smiling, while the emperor in the picture looks cold and lonely. Still, the resemblance is crazy, but she ignores her doubts, believing Principal Serafina wouldn't lie to her, and that a busy emperor wouldn't waste time on someone like her. Suddenly, the librarian announces that the library is closing, and Ivy panics because she hasn't finished studying yet. On her way back, she passes Professor Cyan's office and notices a light, so she hopes he's there and rushes toward it. Meanwhile, Irene is studying hard in the cafeteria, determined to stay in the same class as Ivy after exams, but she's finding it hard to focus whenever she's around. Arcel arrives to study too, and asks her why she's avoiding Ivy. She explains she can't concentrate with her there. He mocks her, saying she should play first and study later, which pisses her off enough to think about hitting him. Luska suddenly appears and tells them something happened to Ivy. Earlier, Ivy reached the professor's office and opened it excitedly, only to be surprised by Israela and her friends. Israela confronts her, accusing her of hiding something in this abandoned building. She points at the pink box and accuses Ivy of getting special treatment and exam answers from her guardian. Ivy denies the accusations, but Israela demands she open the box. When Israela tries to take the box by force, Ivy pushes her, and Israela's friends rush to check on her. Her friends get angry and demand Ivy apologize. At the cemetery, the Emperor decides to end his relationship with Ivy. He realizes his special attention might put her in danger, and admits he was being selfish. He decides to disappear from her life, confident she'll be fine with her friends and teachers. He plans to have Serafina tell her that Professor Cyan had to leave on a long, urgent trip. The Emperor apologizes to his late wife and daughter for neglecting them, and vows it won't happen again. On his way back, he passes the academy, which is fully lit for exam season, and thinks of Ivy. He decides it's better to say goodbye in person instead of just leaving a note, and heads toward his office, knowing his sudden disappearance will hurt her. Suddenly, a student rushes up, calling him Professor. He worriedly tells him there's a massive fight in the next building, pointing toward the Emperor's office. Upon arrival, the Emperor finds a crowd of students gathered at the door. Inside, Luska is trying to hold back a furious Irene, while Israela stands to the side. The Emperor decides to intervene, but he freezes when he sees Ivy kneeling on the floor in a pitiful state, with bruise marks on her face. 10 minutes before he arrived, Arcel had found Israela and her friends trying to take the box. Irene intervened and attacked one of the girls, but Luska stepped in quickly to stop her before she could go for Israela. While Arcel tries to calm Ivy down, Irene screams that bullies deserve punishment. Israela mocks her, saying Ivy will be expelled anyway, calling her an orphanage beggar. Irene explodes in rage and threatens her, while rumors spread among the students that Ivy cheated, and that the proof is in the box. Doubt starts to creep into Irene, but she chooses to trust Ivy, and asks her to open the box to prove her innocence. Ivy refuses while crying, and that's when the Emperor arrives. He wipes away Ivy's tears, and orders Arcel and Luska to bring a wet towel. Israela is shocked by his boldness in ordering around noble children, and accuses him of being the fraud who gave Ivy the cheat sheets. Ivy stands up and fiercely defends him, insisting she doesn't care what's said about her, but she won't allow the professor to be insulted, because she doesn't want him in trouble. Irene is moved by her stance, and Ivy decides to open the box to end it. When she opens it, they find nothing but some old snacks and a worn-out notebook, leaving everyone in shock. Israela collapses in disbelief, and starts searching frantically for the answer sheet. The Emperor picks up Ivy to leave, but Israela stops him, screaming that the real Kian Roche is an old, sick man. She asks mockingly if he still denies being a fraud. The Emperor calmly admits he isn't Kian Roche, and Israela rejoices, thinking she's exposed him. Principal Serafina arrives and orders the students back to their rooms. Israela proudly tells her she caught a fake professor. Serafina looks at the Emperor, and Israela accuses her of conspiring with him to protect Ivy. Serafina is stunned and shouts, "Your Majesty?" Silence falls over the place, and Israela realizes the horrifying truth. The Emperor asks Israela why she called Ivy lowly. She replies that she's from an orphanage and picks through trash. Ivy defends herself, saying she didn't steal anything, but was collecting reusable items to help her poor orphanage. The Emperor holds her tenderly, realizing she hid these things to protect her dignity, and intended them as gifts. Serafina asks why he's there, and he tells her he no longer intends to hide, which terrifies her. She kneels, thanking him for his limitless grace, and all the students follow suit. The Emperor asks about the penalty for assaulting a student, and Serafina looks at Ivy's injuries. Serafina explains it ranges from a week's suspension to permanent expulsion. The Emperor then asks about the penalty for false accusations and assaulting a younger student. Serafina confirms the penalty is expulsion and a future ban from the academy. The Emperor adds that they involved outsiders, referring to Israela's brother. He orders an investigation, and Israela realizes she's done for. Her brother is in trouble, and her father will be furious. She begs for mercy, claiming Ivy started it, but he ignores her and leaves. Outside the infirmary, the Emperor refuses to wait in his office and insists on staying there. When the doctor comes out, the Emperor asks anxiously about Ivy. The doctor says the bruises will last for several days, making the Emperor worry about scars. The doctor reassures him she'll recover in a week, but adds that these aren't minor injuries, and that the real issue might be the psychological trauma. The Emperor decides he must see her, to be by her side while she's scared. But when he opens the door, he's surprised to see Ivy getting up on her own and bowing low before him, thinking that's the proper way to greet him. The Emperor tells her not to worry about formalities and asks if she's okay. Ivy hesitantly asks if he's really the Emperor, and he confirms his identity. Ivy is shocked, remembering all her past actions with him, from wandering the cemetery to sleeping in his arms at the festival, and she fears she might lose her head. The Emperor asks why she didn't request new supplies from the academy. She explains that she didn't want to break the rules regarding personal use of supplies, even if it was to help her friends at the orphanage. The Emperor is deeply moved by her commitment to the rules and how she sacrificed her pride for others, even when no one was watching. He realizes this is exactly the quality he's looking for in an heir, and he regrets that he can't nominate her due to the minister's objections to her social status. He tells her to keep calling him Professor until the end of the semester, and even suggests she call him by his first name, a privilege he's only given to his two closest friends. Ivy shyly tries to say his name, and he smiles, telling her that's much better. When she mentions she's used to injuries, he realizes she only talks about happy memories from the orphanage, so he decides to learn more about her life before that. The doctor gives Ivy some bitter medicine, and she hesitates to drink it, so he offers her a piece of candy. The Emperor takes it from him to give it to Ivy himself, and she's delighted by the sweet taste. The doctor is amazed to see the Emperor smiling like this. Just months ago, he was suffering from severe depression, and he realizes this child is the reason for his change. The headmaid arrives to take Ivy back to the dorm before curfew. The Emperor wishes she could stay longer, but he realizes he can no longer move freely now that his identity is out, so he orders the Imperial Knights to escort her. The Knight Commander Rommel is surprised by this, and wonders who Ivy Alden is. One of the knights, Hilda, objects to using elite knights for a simple escort mission, calling the decision disappointing, and demanding the Emperor reconsider. The Emperor agrees with her point, and orders Rommel to pick a few trusted men for the task, then calls Ivy to come closer, leaving Hilda wondering why the Emperor cares so much about this girl. After Ivy returns wearing a new outfit provided by the maids, she's surprised to find a group of men she doesn't recognize. The Emperor reassures her not to be afraid and introduces the Imperial Knights he summoned to escort her back to the academy. Hilda, who objected earlier, drops her stern look and introduces herself kindly to Ivy, who responds with a polite greeting, impressing the other knights. The knights start acting goofy, which annoys the Emperor. When they notice Ivy is tired, they compete over who gets to carry her. But Hilda stops them, calling it inappropriate and suggesting a carriage instead. Ivy is surprised by their behavior. They don't look like the fierce warriors she imagined. Earlier, Ivy was talking to Luska about his future plans, and he told her he dreams of joining the Imperial Knights, inspired by the heroic stories he heard about Commander Rommel and Hilda during the Succession War, stories Ivy used to love listening to. When they reach the academy gate, Commander Rommel warns her that the bullies might cross her path again. At that moment, Irene rushes toward her and hugs her tightly, worried for her safety. Irene asks what happened with the Emperor and Israela, but Hilda intervenes, and Irene introduces herself as Ivy's best friend. Hilda tells Irene that the Emperor ordered them to escort Ivy right to her room, turning the scene into a show of power in front of all the students. Hilda makes it clear that this is a warning to anyone thinking of hurting Ivy or Irene, and that any attack on them will be seen as a direct challenge to the Emperor and the Imperial Knights. In their room, Irene tells Ivy what happened after she left. Israela and her friends broke down and begged the principal for mercy, while the students who watched silently before were now pretending to be worried about her. Irene advises her to ignore them completely. Ivy feels happy to be with Irene and asks if she can sleep with her that night, which Irene happily accepts, and they spend the night talking. The next morning, Arcel and Luska are waiting for them anxiously in front of the dorm, suggesting Ivy skip classes, but she refuses because exams are coming up. Meanwhile, the mothers of the expelled students, including Israela's mother, are causing a scene at the academy. demanding their daughter's release and blaming Ivy for everything. They also accuse the principal of negligence and protecting a commoner, threatening to expose that Ivy's guardian is a fake and demanding her resignation. A previous scene reveals that these mothers were summoned to the palace, and they thought the fake guardian was just some random palace official, acting arrogant because they were backed by a countess. However, the chaos eventually settles, and Israela and her friends are officially expelled. On exam results day, the four friends gather in anticipation. Luska expresses confidence that he did well thanks to Ivy's help with studying, and Irene also looks confident in her results. Arcel acts strangely. Then they all suggest revealing their results at the same time. A previous scene shows the mothers being summoned to a reception hall at the palace, thinking things would be easy with the Countess's support, but they are shocked when the Emperor himself walks in, announcing he is Ivy's guardian. Israela's mother collapses in fear, while the rest of the attendees try to act innocent. Back on results day, the friends reveal their grades. Ivy ranked 2nd, while Irene ranked 16th, happy that she can stay in the same class as Ivy. As for Luska, he ranked 35th, the best result he's ever had in his life. He happily decides to send his transcript to his family immediately, and thanks Ivy warmly for her help. To repay her, Luska invites Ivy to spend the break at his family's large farm. Ivy loves the idea, as she was thinking of going back to the orphanage but feared being a burden to the headmistress. Irene angrily jumps in, insisting Ivy must visit her house first as her best friend. Then Arcel joins the debate, tempting Ivy with his family's massive library full of rare books, which pisses off the others, who accuse him of cheating. In the end, Ivy decides she'll visit all their homes to keep her friends happy. Later, while Ivy is walking alone after one of her classes was canceled, she realizes she hasn't seen Professor Malice in 2 weeks. She decides to visit him to show him her results, then visit the Emperor's cemetery. On her way, 2 students approach her and act overly nice. Soon, more students gather around her, treating her with extreme kindness after learning about her connection to the Emperor, which makes her feel uncomfortable and scared. 2 professors step in and disperse the students, so Ivy takes the chance to run away. She reaches Professor Malice's room to catch her breath and finds him waiting there for her. The professor expresses deep concern for her after the incident, assuring her that her health is the most important thing, and vowing to protect her from anyone who dares to bother her again. Ivy feels relieved and safe, realizing she has someone who truly cares for her. She thanks him and tells him she missed him, and he admits he missed his students too. When she asks why he was away, he tells her he has something to say. Meanwhile, an elegant woman is asking 2 students for the location of Professor Malice's hall.